Since the late 1990s, a peculiar phone number began circulating amongst websites, newspapers, magazines, and more. It was said that calling this number played an unknown voice counting from 1 to 10. The purpose behind this message and who created it remains a mystery. Today, we dive into the puzzling internet rabbit hole of 1-800-GOLF-TIP. This is Red Web. Welcome back, Task Force, to another episode of Red Web, the show all about internet mysteries. That's our bread and butter, but you know we've stretched our little legs into cryptids, the paranormal, traditional true crime. As always, each week we break down a new mystery. I am your resident mystery enthusiast, Trevor Collins, and joining me with his gut instincts, hearing this mystery for the very first time, Alfredo Diaz.
Well, you're going to make sure that the task force gets their meat, potatoes, and veggies.
Right.
You know,
strong bones, strong muscles.
Yeah, it can't just be protein all the time.
Right.
This is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I guess when you think about it, anyone can really just pay to take out an ad in the newspaper. I don't think there's a huge vetting process type of thing.
Right.
It's like you pay us, we advertise what you want to see advertised.
Mm-hmm.
So already I'm like, okay, it's apparently like golf tips. Like, is that? So I'm thinking in my head, like, I guess the ad is for golf tips and advertising golf tips.
That's what it feels like. I mean, that's the number.
Yeah.
I do want to say before we get too deep into it, because I can hear the rotary phones going off the hook. Right. That's what we have here at the HQ. But I also hear the tippity taps of people with the smartphones. Harder to trace, right? This number is still live. However, it is not what we're going to talk about today. It is a not safe for work hotline. It's explicit. So don't go diving in there. And if you do, don't say I didn't warn you.
What do you mean? Okay, so it's kind of like a sexy hotline. I thought it was like a counting 1 through 10. Is it like a 1?
It went from
2,
right. And then it's like the build up to 3. Like, oh, I love a good 3.
4, 5.
Oh, keep it going. No, almost there.
6.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, so that's where it is now today.
Right, so there's more depth than I thought.
There's a lot of depth. And this one is interesting because it's one of those unique ones that transcended the internet barrier. It started in the early 90s, late 90s area, and then leapt onto the internet because a lot of people, as they grew up, I don't know about you, but I did a lot of prank phone calling, goofing around on phone numbers, trying things out. Like, you know, because like each of the numbers correlates to a letter or a few letters.
Right.
So you can kind of type in what you want, like maybe 1-800-ALFREDO. What's that going to be?
Oh.
And see what it says.
It's the Olive Garden.
Oh, the breadsticks. But so people grew up and then they went to the internet and they said, did anyone else find this number? And that's kind of where we are today. This has so much information all the way up till last year.
I love it.
Oh, yeah.
I love like a mystery that still has some dribbles in the recent years. I don't know why I said it like that, but here we are.
Hands-on, tangible dribbles.
Before we dive into it, and this is just because like generations, I just can't imagine being the whole like read the newspaper, see a number, dial it, like, you know what I mean? Like with the different advertisements.
There's some information that might, your gut instinct is very compelling. But when we get there, you might find some reasoning as to why you might dial it. But how people found it, I'm with you. I'm not just dialing willy-nilly.
Yeah, but I mean, that's how it was back then, though. You read the newspaper and you dial, certain advertisements that you see, maybe lawn care or something like that. I wonder if, like, decades from now, people are just like, oh, iPhone? Like
phone calls?
Like touch screen?
Physical? Tangible?
I have my Google glasses.
I have my Think phone.
Something like this. I mean, there's got to be something, right, that eventually like leaps the phone, in which are like many, generations right now, just like, this is my like. You
think I'm in class right now? I'm FaceTiming Bay.
Right.
I'm brain timing.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Well, you got to also remember, let me take you back in time to 1999 because there's no caller ID. People are firing off like it's the early internet. Anonymity is going crazy. It's going wild. So since at least 1999, people online have been searching for answers about this strange phone number that they came across as children in the 90s. In one discussion on this specific phone number from 2010, you have Reddit user 606. We're going to hear a lot from this user. They talked about this mystery for years, so bless them for keeping this thing alive and updating. So 606 wrote on the subreddit WTF that they and their friends would call various 1-800 numbers with different phrases to see what would happen. Now, in my notes here, I've got Gen Z Jillian's research coalesced, distilled down, the sippy cup of knowledge beyond the knowledge,
Right.
And it says here, because it's a bit of an opinion part, many kids would do this often, and I don't understand why, but they would do it with funny or grotesque terms. I just don't get it. And I go, as a child of the 90s, I understand.
Right, yeah.
Right? You can just start tippy-tap typing away
100%.
and see where it takes you.
Yep. Yeah.
It might be a toll number, but you're not hitting the bill.
Nope. Not
But
at all.
yeah, it was a pastime for us stick and hoop kids.
Yes. Stick and hoop.
So user 606 claimed that their friend was the one who stumbled across 1-800-GOLF-TIP. The friend had learned about the number through word of mouth as it was being passed along by friends of friends of friends of friends of friends. One of those viral elementary stories that kind of just makes
Hits
the leap.
the schoolyard, all of a sudden it's everywhere.
Yep, absolutely. When they called the number, instead of receiving a golf tip like you'd expect, they heard somebody with what they believed to be a South Asian accent counting from 1 to 10. In 606's thread from 2010, commenters recall calling this very number as far back as the 1980s. So it's one of those things that immediately sparked intrigue.
And still going?
And is still going. And people were like, I heard this too. Everyone's coming to the table going, I thought this was really niche. But it turns out it was just one of those things that was common knowledge among the kids.
That's the beauty about like the internet, like today, is the fact that you can have this, what you think is very intimate like event that happened to you, and then everyone else, you realize tons of people have experienced it, right? Nothing's better, and to like pull it back, nothing's better than nowadays when you search for something and you're trying to fix something, whatever it be your computer or whatever it is, you search for it and you're like, oh, thank God someone asked this question in 2014.
A very specific problem.
And here's like 8 answers and it still applies to this day.
Hold on.
Like,
there's one answer and then there's 8 people going, I have the same problem. For like 3 pages.
True. Majority of people are
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't go, me too. Like, I get it. I know you also have it, but you're not. I'm scrolling through a bunch of people. Also,
I mean, I guess they could, if it's a forum, bring it back to the top.
I guess it does bump it, but then there's forum rule. Anyway, I'm getting
you're
taking me back.
Through 'em.
But that's the thing. I want to just kind of get into it because a lot of people now grew up with the internet, and I certainly in my late or like I guess around 10 to 13 range started to get that dial-up going. So chat rooms and whatnot. But I also remember vividly just before the internet how things would jump from elementary school to elementary school and how kids would like suddenly like it was like we were all a connected hive mind without the internet. And so there was this magic to it all. Like how did people know the same gimmicks, the same games, the same limericks? And nowadays it's all on the internet. And so people go, oh, it's because of the internet. Somehow things hit the zeitgeist and enter this really social hive mind. And I loved that, like thinking on that.
Like, how did everyone know? And this was actually not good for the item itself, but how did everyone know, like, if a Nintendo cartridge didn't work, blow on the cartridge?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Tons of people were just like, yeah, you just blow on it.
Right.
I guess it was just passed on by word of mouth.
Right. Task Force, I'm not thinking of any good examples off the top of my head, and you guys are great. Hit us up on social or wherever you listen to us at Red Web Pod. Let us know if there was something that was kicking around your school that was like, how did this come here? It's common knowledge, but we don't know how it leapt here, and it was everyone knew. Give me more examples. But coming back to it, across the internet, many people had the same discussion, wondering what this number was for, or asking themselves, does anyone else know or even remember this phone number? And this is where the magic of the internet comes to play, where you're like, oh my God, everyone also had this very niche question, as you were saying.
Yeah.
So discussions on the number can even be found in some strange places, such as in 2005, there were forums on the Tribe magazine. It's a Canadian art magazine. They had forums for that magazine. There was forums for the Honda Civic in particular. If you're a gearhead and you love cars, there's definitely some niche forums there. But in 2008, car forums were talking about this. So it made the rounds in the generals.
Huh. Okay, so it leaped beyond just like, I guess, random discussion forums.
It transcended trend or hobby.
Okay.
Yeah. There were other threads in forums all across Reddit. We've talked about 4chan that have asked, what is 1-800-GOLF-TIP? What was its purpose? What's behind it? Is it sinister? Is it an ARG? Is it, what is it? Many have said that the person counting would stop and take a breath while counting. It's interesting that this is one of the details people remember, but when they debate about it, a lot of people are like, no, the pause was between numbers 6 and 7. What is it?
I was just about to ask that.
Yeah.
Where was the pause?
Where's the pause?
Okay.
And that's where you have almost like a Mandela effect where some people are like adamant between 6 and 7, there was definitely a pause. And others are saying, no, it was between 7 and 8.
Yeah, see, that's a difficult thing because, I'm wondering, is someone answering? It's probably automated, right?
I would hope so. Maybe they were taking a pause because it's somebody answering the phone all day. And they're like,
oh, okay, here we go. I've counted 10 about 300 times today.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I was more so to think like it's probably not live. It's probably automated.
Yeah.
But then also like if it is with different recordings, why do different recordings? Just do one and that's it.
Right. Well, that's the thing. And when it comes to the recording, I spoke offline to Christian, man in the chair, our producer here.
Hello.
And he's got that sultry voice. And oh, there's some more. Now, I was wondering if we could get this recording into the episode. I don't know if there's copyright issues or whatever, but it turns out this recording seems lost to time. And a lot of the recordings you can find are either snippets, it's unverifiable if it's the original, if it's people remaking it. And so, unfortunately, this is one of those mysteries we can't bring to you like we would want to, but there is something later on that we can listen to that's part of this mystery.
I mean, it's so repeatable. You're just counting to 10.
Right, with a pause somewhere between 6, 7, and 8.
Choose whatever pause you want.
Right.
Boom, done.
Choose your own adventure. So, in recounting this counting, people talking about their experiences with this phone number, many people would also stay on the line. And after a moment of silence, after this counting from 1 to 10 was done, people would report hearing a loud siren-like noise. Some would describe it as kind of like a scream. One anonymous member on 4chan said that they left it playing, the phone number, for 12 whole minutes before the siren started to play. User 606 and many others didn't get any answers, but users online have been desperate for said answers. Of course, many who remember calling the number are actually from Canada, and they recall that there was also a billboard advertising this very phone number. Additionally, many people reported calling from a payphone so they could just leave the thing off the hook and kind of come back. I don't know how payphones work, but I feel like you got to throw a lot of quarters in if you're going to let it sit for 12.
I mean, also, someone's going to come up and use the damn payphone.
Right. They're going to go, what is this? 1, 2, 3, Sesame Street here? Click.
Right. So someone actually like put money behind it, right?
Yes.
It's money to get it into the newspaper. And it's money to put it on a billboard.
Absolutely.
So someone's putting some cash behind it.
And we're starting to get a locale too. So we know there's cash in play, there's advertisements, and there's a locale. Specifically, a lot of these were being reported around St. Catherine, Ottawa, and Toronto, all worth mentioning are cities in Ontario, Canada. So there's your locale for what it's worth. Those being from St. Catherine reported seeing the billboard in their city, and this billboard featured a golf ball, a club, some grass, and the sky, as well as the number, of course, in giant yellow 3D letters. Those who remembered seeing this billboard claimed that it was above a movie theater. So the more details that come out, as with every internet mystery, the more confusion, the more questions. None of this seems to
seem like a pretty straightforward advertisement.
Right. But does any of it click together?
Not
for
yet.
You? What do you like? I'm not feeling anything yet.
No, I'm just like, okay, someone is just kind of messing around with an advertisement. Going back and thinking back, you said this number is still live, right?
It's still live.
Obviously, warning the task member out there. It's at your own risk.
I mean, it'll probably toll you too. So if you're looking for a good bill, you know.
So how do we not know? I was thinking about this now, I'm putting it together.
Yeah.
How do we not know when the pause is? Or does it not do the counting anymore?
It doesn't do the counting anymore. Yeah, that's the thing.
I thought as much. I just wanted to double check.
That's the thing. And we'll kind of dabble a little bit more with that because now that's the background as we like to talk about the history, the background. Now let's talk about the investigation because this is where the internet, as always, comes to play. I've always stood by the idea that the internet is essentially the next frontier in investigation. It's maybe not as powerful as something as DNA analysis or fingerprinting or whatever, but I love the idea of a hive mind with many people like the task force with many different backgrounds and experiences. Man, they all came to play, by the way, showing us what they were doing when they were listening, just to see what everyone is doing while they're listening to these mysteries. It just shows the breadth of experience. I love it.
It's a good time.
Yeah. So with that said, let's dive into the details that get uncovered as the internet starts to look back on this and investigate. So there's a popular thread on the subreddit RBI by the user Oh I Get Jokes in 2018 that helped spark a lot of investigation into exactly what 1-800-GOLF-TIP was. For what it's worth, and I know we've talked about it before, it's one of my faves, RBI is an acronym for Reddit Bureau of Investigation. It gets
What?
Oh yeah, it gets cross-posted to the Red Web community subreddit all the time when people go there to either start asking questions or to look closer at things, and it's essentially just a bunch of other task force members doing their thing.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So sometimes threads on there go viral, sometimes they're just discussions, but this is where they posted this number to start looking into it. In this particular thread and the follow-up posts in 2019 and September 21st of 2022, Reddit users were able to coalesce previously known facts and greatly expand on the information known at the time, and this led to further research. So I gave you 3 dates there, 2 years and 1 specific date. We're going to break down each of those at a time. So let's go specifically into 2018 and talk about what came from that year.
It's really recent.
Very. So user Oh I Get Jokes wrote similarly to the previous user that we discussed, and they added that they saw the billboard in their town of St. Catherine, once again, by a movie theater. It's unknown if there were any more billboards or who purchased them at the time, but they were basically stamping a fact. It was a billboard. One thing that they noted was that many people, including their friends at the time, called the number just to let it ring, just to see what it was all about. Seemed like a funny number at least.
Yeah.
But this is where Jillian reiterates, it's unknown why people thought to do that, but hey, when you're young and you're bored, you're going to call a couple numbers.
Right. I mean, back then we didn't have the internet and so many different things to grab your attention, like billboards worked, you know what I mean? More so than they do now.
Right. You remember the billboards that would like have the little pieces that rotated?
Oh, yeah.
And it would become different billboards?
The like dynamic billboards. Yeah, for sure.
Now they're all TV screens or whatever.
That's true.
But I mean,
more modern.
Phone calling was such a big thing that Comedy Central had a whole show with puppets about crank calls.
You're right.
So, I mean, like, it was a thing. Prank phone calls were a huge thing. I don't know if they still are, but, you know.
No, not anymore.
Now it's caller ID and traceability.
Caller ID and, like, you have phone companies or, like, the phone brand in general that have, like, tools to help block numbers.
Yep. I mean, now it's so advanced you could spoof numbers.
Yeah, that's
wild out there.
That is very true.
So coming back to 2018, Reddit user Kunalindi actually found an archived article, and it's one of the earliest known mentions anywhere about the phone number 1-800-GOLF-TIP. This article stemmed back to 1993.
Holy.
Oh yeah. And it was for a school newspaper for Carleton University in Ottawa called The Charlatan. Now, I'm going to text my girlfriend right now because she spent a lot of her time growing up in Ottawa. I'm very curious if she'd heard of this, and I'll see if she reports back before we stop recording. But in this article, it says, quote, 6 things we like, 3 things we hate, and 1 thing we just don't care about. 1-800-GOLF-TIP is number 1. The oldest discussion known online as well, and this comes back to Usenet in 1999, a very, very rudimentary early iteration of what amounted to be the internet. We've talked about Usenet and some other internet mysteries, but it's basically a way for people to talk through computers, through an interface. I'm just liking it to similar to the internet, right?
Right. So hold on.
Okay.
So this is like an article.
Okay, so
that's talking about just,
yeah,
I guess advertisements in general.
The context is very strange.
It's just so weird. Just like, here's an article. These are the advertisements we like, we don't like, and just don't care. I mean, I guess people like making lists. People like reading lists.
I mean, the lists are a huge thing now.
It's just so weird. Like, imagine like a magazine today is riddled with ads.
Yep.
And there's an article in it, or just a little, like a page, just like the advertisements we like, don't like, and don't care about. It's weird. It's weird to me.
It is odd.
If it's how I'm picturing it,
it's
weird.
Yeah, so there's the article from 93, and then there's an online discussion in 99, for just to clarify.
Yep.
But in this discussion, people are kind of sharing their paranoia about this particular phone number. I'm not exactly sure what's so sinister about it, but I think it's simply not knowing, not being able to look up who owns it or who, whatever.
I mean, it's just counting.
That's true. Why would somebody count? What's behind it? What's the motive?
Who knows? I mean, that's where you can spiral, but at the end of the day, I'm just like,
that's exactly it.
I count the count. There's a breath. You gotta mention the breath. Long pause, siren, done.
I think the siren for me is what makes it kind of freaky. If it's suddenly, I just heard this really sultry 1 through 10, and then I'm like, maybe I want to hear 11 and 12. Like, when's that coming? You know?
I could be wrong about this, but I don't think advertising in newspapers was that expensive. How some billboards, especially if it's like more in the middle of nowhere, they're thousands of dollars to actually like rent out.
I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
I mean, to your point, it was a plot device in so many shows that people were like, I'll just throw an advertisement in the newspaper.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it was.
And so it's like,
find a whole classified
costs
page.
money, but it's not like you gotta be damn rich to advertise on. Yeah, you know. So it's what I'm trying to get at is that it's cheap enough for someone like with either savings or a decent income to be like, I'm gonna play a joke.
It opens it up. Yeah, it opens it up to a broad
the
pool.
Barrier to entry is a lot lower than you think about.
Yes, I agree. But coming back to it here, as we see the evolution of 1-800-GOLF-TIP, we flash forward just a little bit to Reddit user Totally TJ, who found a website then, 1-800-GOLFTIP.com. Again, I don't know if it's live or not. Tread carefully if you're going to start clicking around, calling around, whatever. But yeah, and that website simply asks for the visitors to submit their memories of the number through a form, though the purpose of these forms is unknown, and it doesn't appear that the owner even monitors the email associated with the website. So now, again, this mystery hasn't transcended only in a discussionary way. It has transcended to become an internet mystery. It is now a website.
Do we know when this website was at least discovered?
Yes, so the domain is privately registered, and we could not find any information about the current owner, but we do know that the website was registered on March 21st, 2018, several months before Oh I Get Jokes' popular Reddit thread. However, there is an earlier, and it's the earliest archived version that we could find, version of this website that goes to, if you go back to the Wayback Machine, you can kind of see archived websites. The earliest one is from 2011. So,
I mean, it's late enough that it could have just been someone trying to outsource experiences.
Maybe. I think what happened was there was a transfer of ownership. Because the original version of the website had large green text counting to 10 and a button that said, again, which simply refreshed the page, counting would continue, just like the phone number. So maybe it was a fan, maybe it was somebody who indulged in it.
Yeah.
And then later, whether it was the same person or not, they just start going. It kind of reminds me of the Happy Valley Dream Survey. It's just a thing that's out there asking for your memories, and it doesn't give you anything back. So who knows what it is now.
I mean, whether it's just like someone that's a fan of the mystery and they create a site around it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is quite elaborate in terms of like the different platforms, right? You can call it, you can see it on a billboard in real life. There's even a website.
And a newspaper clipping.
Yeah. So there's like time and dedication to this.
Yeah.
Oddly enough. And so far, it's gotten us nowhere except teaching us how to count from 1 to 10.
Many times.
Yeah.
It's definitely feels like a dedicated thing. Like either one person is keeping this thing alive for many years, or it just became so viral that fans of it kept it going. But the fans themselves never
came out and were like,
right,
I made this site. It's me.
They just put things out. Like making a geocities.com/1-800-GOLF-TIP, and anybody could have done that.
True.
So following the first Reddit thread in 2018, there's YouTuber Barely Sociable. We've talked about him before in one of my favorite YouTube channels. He gets very in the weeds and does a lot of investigative journalism, but he made a video covering Golf Tip, and even more information came in from that. Not only his discussion about the mystery, but also within the comments section of his video. So Barely Sociable found the owner of the number to be Mayfair Communications, though it appears that it was absorbed by or a subsidiary of PrimeTel. Very little information can be found on Mayfair, and it turns out that they may have had their own sort of mystery, maybe another mystery for another day. But both companies are based out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So now we have a totally different locale, but not too far, if you will, as the crow flies from Ottawa, Toronto, everything. So the number was last updated per his investigation, December 11, 2011, And before that, the last update was January 20th, 1998, 3 years after the article was published in the school newspaper. I love this kind of stuff, trying to connect all these dots.
So now we got a company behind it?
So we're entering a territory with these dates that it feels like the number to me, and we'll talk more about it. So maybe you'll kind of
handoff.
It feels like
ownership.
Yes, it feels like a handoff, or it's very reminiscent of this very time period where people would park websites. I think this company could be parking a phone number. Maybe it lapsed in ownership for whoever was the origin, or maybe they were the origin. I don't know, the original owners, but either way, they came to own it.
I like to think that it lapsed because what is the company doing with it? Or it's something that they kicked up and then put like a placeholder audio cue, which was the counting, and then ditched it completely.
Yeah. Well, either way, it is unknown if there was an owner before Mayfair and Primetel got into play. So that's where, again, I'm with you. My gut instinct says probably, just based on what I'm about to say. The company itself is known for hoarding 1-800 numbers, such as Golf Tip.
Oh.
And redirecting them to the same explicit hotline. And so when you start to scoop up all these viral numbers, you start to funnel them down into your moneymakers, your pay to listen or pay to, what is it called? Pay by minute or whatever. But yeah, Primetel's owners also own these hotlines. And in 2010, they owned 1.9 million out of the 7.8 million possible 800 number combinations, worth around $100 billion.
Oh, that's just a business I have never even thought of.
Right?
Well, yeah, that makes, when you break it down, just distill it into a sippy cup, right? Really piece it out. That's tasty juice.
There's a lot of good juice.
It makes sense. Yeah. Scoop up all the 1-800 numbers. If you got a good chunk of it, at that point, it's like, yeah, you can sell them off. You're worth something.
And I think now you'll understand maybe why this is very similar to parking websites, which a lot of people do, like to not, ransom is too hard of a word, but to basically go, well, if you want bestbuy.com, which I scooped up in 2001, you're going to have to pay the big bucks because I know you're a big company or whatever. Interestingly enough, right, to verify what I'm talking about, the company definitely owns many internet domains with common words, many of those including the word free or including the word babies, interestingly enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that adds up.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Oddly enough.
What
a weird business.
Yeah.
But hey, people try to make money off of anything.
It's true. I mean, there's a business for just about anything, and I guess I just don't think much about phone numbers.
A business that a lot of people are doing, like, because, people are doing from home businesses, is like a lot of stuff that you see on Amazon is like...
Oh, you're talking drop shipping?
Is that what it's called?
Well, yeah, that's
when you see an item on Amazon and it's like, oh, okay, then you actually like check what it's worth in like bulk, and it's it's like, oh, this item's $15 on Amazon, but you can buy it in bulk by the hundreds or thousands, and it's like $1.
Right.
And you literally. So one of the things too is like, if you buy something on Amazon, most likely it's from the company, but sometimes it's from a third party because a lot of people forget is that you can sell stuff on Amazon. It's there's a lot of third party.
I used to sell my old phones on it.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Mark them as used, undercut the market because I'm just trying to sell it. I'm not trying.
Right. Exactly. So I mean, there's a lot of people that are just like, okay, I'm gonna take all these like factory made huge bulk items and then just sell them on Amazon.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's a huge thing right now. And before you even think about easy money, drop shipping ain't gonna get you anywhere. Don't try it. Don't get into it. It's kind of scammy. But yeah, people will go to like, a wholesaler of any kind.
Yeah.
Scoop up a bunch of something.
Yep.
And then put up a storefront, connect those storefront to their wholesaler, and then they'll just try to hands off and be like, easy money, but good luck catching any wind, right?
True. That's the thing is catching wind.
But yeah, that's totally something that happens. If I'm using that term correctly, it's either way that happens. And before we get too far away from it, that's the end of like the investigation of 2018.
Okay.
Very reminiscent of the South 32, as Christian reminded me, like mystery that we talked about with mysterious websites, kind of digging into the information. But before we get into 2019 and that information, I did want to shout out ourselves because on March 9th, you brought up the Sippy Cup of Knowledge.
What?
You and I are going to sit down for 45 minutes to an hour.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to launch the Sippy Cup of Knowledge to the task force. You can come get them. every single pre-order that happens during this live stream, as we are doing a little live shopping experience, we're going to imbue these cups with knowledge.
Yeah, and I got so much knowledge to put into these cups.
Absolutely. What does that knowledge look like? It could be scary facts. It could just be reading out little bits of knowledge from this show and elsewhere. I tuck little pieces of paper in there to make sure you know the fact is legitimate.
I mean, I'm going to be writing stuff from run to howdy to hey you, yeah you.
Hey you. What, me? Yes, you. Oh my God, it's talking to me. Yeah, put me down. Put the cup down. Okay.
That's what I'm. So less knowledge.
Okay, so there's knowledge, and then there's
there's just gonna be random stuff written on it.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Hell yeah, do that.
So
maybe
anyway,
we shouldn't.
If you want knowledge in your cup, if you want your cup to come pre-imbued with knowledge and whatever Fredo puts in it to cloud your mind, come hang out with us.
Do stuff like right in the front. This is Christian. And then you turn around, it's just me, Alfredo.
Not me. Christian's off to the side. No, it's not.
It's going to be just whatever comes out of my mind. You've been warned, Task Force.
Yeah. Trust that everyone that you get is going to have just imbued with juicy knowledge or something. Especially if you get it during that window. But anyway, just a little self shout out. Watch our socials for how to get in on that live stream. But we're going to make sure that wherever you can find our content, our video content, you'll be able to find this stream.
And March 9th is the date. Mark your calendars. March 9th.
March 9th. All right. Self-promo out of the way. A little ad hoc one. I normally do that in the break between mystery. But let's move on to 2019. A lot of more juicy details to put into that nice new cup of knowledge you got coming. So 2019, user I Get Jokes also found a YouTube commenter on Barely Sociable's video, their name, number 5ESS. This commenter explained the siren or that screaming noise that played after repeated counting. I Get Jokes said it sounded pretty much exactly like the tone, meaning, quote, no such number, also nicknamed Crybaby. Basically to say that there's a specific tone, I think it was designed by Bell Labs, to be a, quote, pleasing yet distinctive and arresting sound for Bell Systems users, something that would be distinctive in tone, because they wanted people to quickly recognize it. So when you hear a dial tone, like, you know what that means. It means the phone line is hot, but you aren't calling anybody.
Yep.
This is a different tone designed to be recognizable, not too off-putting, but it basically tells you the number has disconnected and it's dialing the number again. Something of that nature. Did I get that right, Christian?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it was developed by this telecom company, Bell Labs, to basically, like you're saying, be used by those who have lines that were made by that company.
Yes.
So that, they can have basically a custom tone that was like a unique identifier for that company.
Yeah, they also, Bell was all over the place. They were like a monopoly on the telecoms.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, that's more like a tone then. I get like it was probably, it sounded like a siren, but really it's a tone. That being said, you said the tone was to signify that it's trying to reconnect again. Does it eventually reconnect?
That's the question I have that's still kind of like hard to decipher because it is such a niche and unique code. It is referred to as the no such number thing, which is basically like, the number you have tried to reach is not available at this time. That is meaning, that means the number is off the hook. It is not live anymore. I think this tone is to indicate that in some way the call was dropped and it's trying to redial it, but it might keep disconnecting. But it's basically a known phone error, not super common. So it's interesting to have that tone diagnosed because maybe it means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Phone disconnects, tries to recall. Maybe it fails. Maybe you hang up. It's basically saying it's not just a siren. It's not something scary.
Right.
It's a known thing.
It's not like a disconnected line.
Right. Which to me kind of helps settle some of the potential sinister undertones.
Right.
Right. So coming back to the 2019 update that I Get Jokes provided, they shared that Montreal-based musician Peabody had the only known recording of the phone call and used it as a sample in their song from 1994. So users online took this song, removed all the music to isolate this tone, and used it to then recreate to the best of their ability what you would hear if you called Golf Tip. I'm going to play the full thing for you, Fredo, but Task Force, you're going to hear simply that siren that has been isolated. We're going to play that for you now, and then Fredo, I'm going to play you the whole thing. So, you heard some of the counting that they recreated.
They got the counting.
But the siren, what do you feel about that?
Sounds more like an old school sci-fi like sound cue.
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, oh, okay.
It's like Fry in Futurama when he thinks he's a robot and he starts going,
yeah.
He's like coming towards.
So it's like we're told, it's described as a siren, then classified as like a tone. But it just sounds like a weird, like a cheap TV show audio cue.
Yeah.
For something that's like being weird or goofy.
Yeah. It definitely sounds very analog, but I don't know what would make that sound. I don't know. Basically, now maybe with that sound in mind, and it's as close as we're going to get to the original phone call siren, but with that sound in mind, I guess I can see why people would have a little bit of paranoia when talking about this in the 90s. When it's fresh on the mind, there's literally no answers. It's kind of unsettling if you don't know anything else about it.
Yeah. I would just think it's okay. It's weird, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like, who else is going to be able to break this down?
So coming back to the YouTube commenter, who seems to, based on their name and based on their understanding of this tone, maybe they know a lot about radio and phone and whatnot, but they also themselves shared a number that if you called it had almost the exact same recording as the old original 1-800-GOLF tip. That number, with the same disclaimer as we've said before, is 229-430-0002. Though the purpose of this number and why this person has it, did they find it, did they make it, I don't know. It's all unknown. But when we called the number, it repeated the count only 3 times, then played our cell phone provider's message saying that the number was unavailable. So it did a more modern version of that siren, which is to say, this number is not... I'm just so confused by that. How is it able to do the counting and then say it's not a number?
Right, because then it would just say it's not a number. There isn't really like a count and then number.
Yeah.
Like, how do you splice that in?
I don't know. Unless it's a recording, like purposeful, to like give the illusion.
True.
Like if you're...
I guess it does an automatic pickup, right? An automated pickup, then plays a recording.
Yeah. Interesting.
The thing is, that's unfortunate, is that with the internet also comes like a huge plethora of resources on how to do things. And with that, it makes it so easy to like mimic and imitate things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Spamming and spoofing is easier than ever. And so, yeah, I mean, you always have to look at something like this with an inquisitive eye. And again, it's nice to reflect on the tone and go, okay, maybe this is why people were paranoid. But what's fascinating about this otherwise relatively pleasant mystery, it's not too dark, is like just how, to your point, how deep the internet was able to go into this one, uncover so many more details, maybe not find an answer, but they certainly found a lot. So through Oh I Get Jokes posts here in 2019, more theories and more possible answers emerged. We're going to talk about some of those here in a bit, including Golf Tip's purpose at one point in time. That leads us very nicely to the year 2022 and the potential PGA involvement. PGA being the, I don't know what it stands for, but like the big golf association.
Golf association? Like the PGA? Okay.
Like the PGA Tour.
Professional Golfers Association.
Got it. Let's talk about it now. One of the most commonly asked questions regarding this tip line is, who created it and why? Of course. In the most recent update of Oh I Get Jokes, by the way, thank you for staying on top of this and continuing the updates over the years. So they shared their theory and some answers regarding some of the remaining questions that have been out there. This points to a 2019 article by the Payphone Project pointing to the PGA as an accidental creator for this tip line.
What?
Yeah, let's talk about it. So the PGA organized a hotline which would be active for one weekend, which can also be referred to as a trunk line. I've never heard of this before, but trunking is a technology for providing network access to multiple clients simultaneously by sharing a set of circuits, carriers, channels, or frequencies, instead of providing individual circuits or channels for each client. It ultimately gives companies access to create hotlines that can reach a multitude of employees at once versus needing individual extensions, which can get very hairy, very expensive.
Yes.
So, point is, the PGA put out a phone number that would be hot and active for one weekend. In the December 3rd, 1994 issue of the Tampa Tribune, there was a promoted number, 1-800-GOLF-TIP, which gave golfers access to about 100 or so PGA members offering golf tips. This is what the little snippet said. Golfers nationwide can receive golf tips today and Sunday via a toll-free instruction hotline presented by the PGA of America and USA Today. The hotline, featuring nearly 100 PGA members, is being offered in conjunction for the Tommy Armour PGA Teaching and Coaching Summit in New Orleans. Call 800-GOLF-TIP. Tom McCrary, teaching professional at River Hills, is playing host to an open house at his teaching center today and Sunday. Might be a totally different thing there, but that's what the whole snippet says.
What a weird advertisement.
Right.
Like, I'm trying to, in my mind, kind of like put myself in an ecosystem that's similar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love basketball. I love FPS, like first-person shooter
Would
games.
you call 1-800-BALL-TIPS?
That's what I'm saying. Like, what do you, like,
Well, what's
right.
silly?
I need tips on my balls.
No, it was
We need ball tips.
Funny email I saw. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
So he's working on other things
Right.
during the show.
So if I'm to call, yeah. So if I'm to call this number to get a tip for my ball,
Right.
Funny email. Yeah.
Another one. Dang, this guy's chatting away.
Man, that's so many emails. And it's just like, can you give me some tips for my ball?
Right.
Right? Like,
I've got this ball.
it needs a tip.
Curious.
Like, how many tips do I get?
Mm-hmm. And is it only the tip? Or
Right.
does more experience come with it?
Yeah. Or is the tip like elaborated?
Right.
You know?
Elongated. Like,
Yeah.
is it one sentence or is it like,
Is there
multiple?
length or girth to the tips that I'm getting?
sure.
But
The analogy is getting a little specific.
Christian. But like, if I needed basketball tips,
Right.
I just so weird to just be like, hey, what's up?
Hey, I'm Reggie Miller. I got a tip for your ball.
Like, I play basketball. I'm in the small forward position.
Right.
Right hand
Monstars.
dominant. Like what am I talking? Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Follow through.
What can you
Keep your arms straight.
give
Grip it and rip
me?
it, you know?
Yeah, like, I don't know.
You know
This
what?
just
We could put
seems
some
so
Fredo
weird.
facts when we stream the Knowledge Cup. We can have some 1-800 Fredo tips going in these cups.
Yeah.
You can write down, grip it and rip it is a good one that I've heard
The
you say
solid
before.
one.
But just common knowledge.
Yeah, always
put
believe,
scary
never
knowledge.
achieve.
Right. I'll put some knowledge that like will kind of like inspire some eerie feelings, some
Yeah.
scary stuff, and you'll just put innocuous like
What?
common sense stuff.
It's just,
you know?
like on the front,
Pop
what
off.
killed the dinosaurs, behind it, the Ice Age.
Right. And that's facts because it's in the Knowledge Cup. Christian, what's going on?
That's a serious podcast.
A lot of
It's
emails.
over here with the
Just a
chuckles.
lot of emails.
I'm excited for Alfredo's facts.
Tips.
Tips. Yeah,
It's over
Alfredo
here with the
tips.
chuckles.
But you're right. I mean, what this feels like to me, though, and this is, young millennial. I'm going to keep throwing young in front of me as long as I can. Straddling the age of the internet, this feels like an early version of engagement with your community, right? It feels like an AMA, an Ask Me Anything, where experts can go online and be reached out to, answer questions. Instead, no internet, you got phone numbers. Reach out, we got 99 PGA Pro members ready to give you some tips.
I mean, if anything, it's just cool to talk to a pro, I guess.
I think it's very cool.
Hmm.
And maybe the number lapsed very quickly after that weekend because PGA's like, I don't care.
So
The
did they
weekend's over.
just like decide like, hey, let's just get that number, and it just so happened to be a number that was previously in use?
I think this is the potential origin. So this is part of the investigation. People have dug into it and they're like, well, because this is coming out in December 94,
right.
maybe this is the origin.
And
but
they just no. So what? They replaced it with someone counting, and then the siren.
someone did. Or, like, I don't know. That's a very interesting point there. And maybe it's just maybe a local, I don't know, because again, we're talking about this being a trunk line. I don't know how that operates. I don't know whose error codes get into play, but maybe the 1 through 10 plus the siren is just a very, very niche phone error. I don't know,
Right.
like maybe that was just it being technically offline before someone scooped it up again.
True.
But again, then people like are talking about hearing this number in the 80s. And I don't know if that's like maybe there's misremembering or
Yeah, I mean, do we have any proof of that?
I don't know.
You know, like
Well, we'll talk about this kind of more in the theories, this potential angle, I
Okay.
think. But there's a few more deets before we get to the theories, though. The number was also promoted December 1st, 1994, in the issue of USA Today, as mentioned in this kind of article. USA Today was apparently a partner in bringing this number to the masses. The interesting thing to note here, though, is that the articles mention this service only being available for the weekend of December 3rd and 4th in 1994 from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. After the weekend of the PGA use, the ownership of the number becomes a question. It's kind of what we were passing around, like that's where it becomes very nebulous. And there's no confirmation on who possessed the ownership of the line after the designated weekend after the PGA operated it. And until Mayfair acquired it, that's a huge gray zone, which is why I'm kind of spitballing. Maybe it's a very weird error.
But I feel like it has to be the origin, right? Because like the PGA advertised it,
Mhm.
used it. Then you have someone like, was it USA Today?
USA Today also promoted it. in that
Right, they
same
promoted
kind
it.
of-
I'm sure they checked it. You know what I mean?
I'm sure, yeah. They owned it.
So at that
that point.
point, it's like it's there, it's functional, it's in use.
Yeah.
I think it is more so after that when it was just discarded,
Right.
left behind.
It would be
Someone
like,
scooped it up and went,
Yeah.
this was once a popular number. I'm just gonna throw some things into, or into a recording and then advertise it places.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how it got to a billboard for when it's just one weekend, especially when it's hitting publications days before or days of it being live. So that part's interesting. Again, we'll talk about things more in the theory section here in just a moment. But yeah, I think what it feels like is what you're saying. Regardless of the gray zone between the PGA and Mayfair, is we wanted the number, we grabbed cats.com, and then we used it for the weekend, and then we threw it to the wind.
Yep.
And then whoever caught it from there, it's basically to say maybe the PGA started the mystery, but they certainly didn't plan for it to become one.
I completely am on that track.
Yeah. What is up, Task Force? It's Trevor, as always, coming right to you in this small pause in the mystery to talk about the goings-on of Red Web. And this time, we go into it at length here in the episode, so I'm going to keep it brief. Mark your calendars. March 9th, Sippy Cup of Knowledge goes on pre-sale, and Fredo and I will be streaming the whole thing for an hour. So if you buy during that live stream, you can come watch us, hang out with us. We are going to imbue your sippy cup with actual task force knowledge and then send it your way. So if you want to see that, head to the Rooster Teeth website or the app, or simply just check us out on YouTube, Red Web Pod, and we'll stream it at all destinations that you can find. And we'll see you there. Otherwise, with that said, let's hear from some of our fantastic sponsors. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by HelloFresh. Remember all the New Year's goals you have for yourself? HelloFresh is here to help you out with eating better, all by delivering ingredients and easy recipes right to your door, taking the hassle out of dinner time. You'll only find quality ingredients in HelloFresh's recipes. In fact, ingredients travel from the farm to your home in less than 7 days, so you know they're going to be fresh and tasty. And now, HelloFresh has 40 weekly recipes to choose from, so you can also get out of your recipe rut and treat yourself and your family to exciting new flavors and combinations every single week. Not to mention, HelloFresh will save you that weekly trip to the grocery store because their delicious, chef-crafted recipes get delivered straight to you. So, no more long checkout lines or searching for somewhere to park. I don't know if you have that experience, but I certainly do. I hate going to the grocery store. You can save all that time and spend it doing the things that you love and eating well with HelloFresh. If you want to do that, go to HelloFresh.com/RedWeb65 and use code RedWeb65 for 65% off plus free shipping. That's 65% off plus free shipping at HelloFresh.com/RedWeb65 and using that code RedWeb65.
Hey, what's up, Task Force? This episode of Red Web is sponsored by Rocket Money. Can you keep track of how much you spend on subscriptions every month? Most Americans think they spend around $80, but in reality, it's closer to $200. Actually, this is pretty much fact. If you're not sure how much you're paying, then you need Rocket Money. Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill, is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. Rocket Money quickly finds and identifies all of your subscriptions for you so you can stop paying for the ones you don't want. So no dealing with tedious emails or phone calls to customer service. I've been using Rocket Money for about 2 months now. It's nice to have everything consolidated into one place. Like I was saying earlier, I was spending around $200 on subscriptions. So it's nice to see that, oh, I don't use Tidal anymore. So let me go ahead and cancel that because it's $15 every month. And the nice little thing too is that I get an email about weekly that tells me what I'm spending and how much I usually spend on that certain category. So it's very nice. So stop throwing away your money, cancel unwanted subscriptions, and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/redweb. That's rocketmoney.com/redweb.
This episode of Red Web is also sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. When we're doing great, we feel like we can tackle the world and no obstacle feels unmanageable. But other times, life can get bogged down and we can feel overwhelmed. That's where working with a therapist can really help. It can help you get closer to the best version of you so you're ready to tackle everything your life throws your way. And if you're thinking of trying out therapy, BetterHelp is a fantastic option. First, it's 100% online, so it's convenient. No need to stress about traffic and getting to an appointment on time or anything like that. Plus, BetterHelp is affordable and flexible. All you have to do is fill out a quick questionnaire and BetterHelp matches you with a licensed therapist. And if it's not a fit for you, you can switch your therapist at any time with no additional charge. It's nice and easy because it's built for you. If you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can help you work on the things and help you get to the best version of you. Visit betterhelp.com/redweb to get 10% off your first month. Again, that's 10% off your first month at BetterHelp, HELP.com/redweb. And with that said, let's jump right back into the mystery. All right, so let's talk about some of the theories behind this fascinating internet mystery. A lot of details that came out in the investigation and even more details to come in exploring some of these theories. Before we dive in, I do want to do a temp check with you. How are you feeling? What are you thinking as far as this number?
I'm thinking that this number was created by the PGA to give people tips. And then from there, it was just left behind. Someone scooped it up, probably a golf fan, but scooped it up and went, this has enough traction, or I can I guess, for whatever reason, I'm kind of leaning towards more so just as something to do. Because a lot of times, people just want something to do.
I got free time. Yeah.
And went, I could put a little bit of money behind it with a pretty good chance of traction because this was used previously and people like golf, you know? I never golfed. I midi golf, but
I've top golfed.
Yeah. But, you know,
hit it really hard.
It's not so obscure to have in a newspaper. It was previously used, previously advertised, and now you own it. You put it in a newspaper. It's gonna get some rings.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, if you could scoop it up after that weekend, you've got a very recent advertisement promoting it. Why not just scoop up that, as they say in the industry, earned media? But again, how are you monetizing it? Anyway, I don't know. But
no clue.
But as you were talking about it, and I was thinking about Topgolf, I invented a new sport. It's golf with a baseball bat. I'm calling it Bolf.
Oh, it sounds dangerous.
Well, it's unpredictable, but it's fun. Theory number one. Sounds dangerous. Let's talk about the first theory. Is this some sort of hybrid between social experiment, a joke, psychological experiment, or something in between? Some test to kind of play with people and how they would interact with this phone infrastructure. Who's to say? Many people who called Golf Tip mentioned the paranoia surrounding their experience. And I think that maybe comes from the uniquely identified tone. It's unique. It certainly stands out like Bell wanted. I don't know if it hit the feels that they were after.
Right.
If you don't know what that tone means.
But also, how are you tracking or tracing it? There wasn't a website until way later.
For sure.
So what's the end game here? Even if it was to I don't know, are you just listening to see what people are saying on the other line?
That's a great point. Just because you're listening to the numbers doesn't mean that they can't be listening actively while that recording's playing.
Yeah.
Record that, put it somewhere, sell the numbers that are calling them as active numbers. That's how you get spam calls.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about
That's why
that.
I don't answer, even if it's like an Austin phone number, which is where we record this podcast. I don't answer it unless I'm expecting a call. One, because I'm a millennial, and two, because I don't want to verify to any number that I'm active unless it's a purposeful call.
Yep.
So, hey. Now, some believe within the confines of this theory that somewhat seriously and somewhat in jest that some kind of psychological experiment could have been going on with this phone number. Many, like user Oh I Get Jokes, wondered why all of them remembered it so well and, quote, why were we all so fascinated in the first place, end quote. And again, that's kind of what we're exploring is what enters the youth zeitgeist and why does it stick? I think there's a lot of curiosity there, but sometimes just because.
I mean, yeah, simply just because.
Curiosity.
Right? It's a mystery. It's got enough backing it. It's got enough credible evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got some recent discoveries.
Absolutely.
It makes for an easy like evening mystery dive.
Oh, yeah. Especially with this in mind. So in addition to that, I mean, we talked about MK Ultra very recently. A lot of wild stuff. Very good. A lot of wild stuff going on in that. But that was declassified in the late 70s. And so that could be on someone's mind as they're thinking about this, because a lot of people felt that after calling the number or because of the crybaby tone in some way, that it was such a peculiar sound that they'd never heard before, that maybe these repeated numbers mixed with this crybaby tone, maybe they were being brainwashed. Maybe in some way it was instilling some sort of brainwashing or mind wiping into them. Or was this waking up agents? We talked a little bit about that sleeper agent stuff in the Number Stations episode recently. But yeah, that's really where a lot of the mystery probably caught its footing, is like, is this mind control?
I feel like the mind control is kind of a reach.
Maybe.
Someone can, it's got to be so strong that someone, I mean, sure, maybe you're activating someone like Marvel Cinematic Universe Winter Soldier style. But how is a count to 10 and then the siren gonna just re-scramble your brain like right then and there?
Right. I've had episodes of Barney scramble my brain more than that.
Right.
You
And
know?
I like, yes, some methods of like reprogramming the brain is like consistently flashing images and like words and sounds and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But this is just, I mean, it's so fast and you're in control.
Mm-hmm. I think it comes back to what we explained earlier. The tone was designed with psychology in mind to be somehow pleasing, yet also stand out as an error. And in that sense, it feels a little disorienting. So regardless of how far-fetched it might feel, I think that's why it really hooked people. And I just want to give some background, by the way, on the crybaby tone, because originally when it was used, it was actually a person's voice that was singing that kind of undulations. It was a singer named Kitty Carlisle, and depending on the location, her voice was actually different, which only adds to the mystique of it all if you were to kind of talk with somebody from a different area.
So oddly elaborate.
Yeah. The Quebec recording was used in the recreation of 1-800-GOLF-TIP that we heard earlier. But I think that's what it is, that vocal timbre, because I couldn't feel out if it was analog or if it was someone's voice.
Yeah.
I thought it must be, to your point, some sort of like way they made sound effects. But yeah, that's what makes it feel eerie maybe, is that it's a woman's voice.
Yeah. I mean, listening to it like with that context, it does feel a little weird. I'm not sitting here thinking I'm being brainwashed, but I'm mind controlled. But I'm sitting here just going, why? You know, and then you start to spiral into, is it because is it bad in any way?
Maybe.
How
So I'm looking more at my notes here, and I'm feeling out a few things. So this is an old recording. Obviously Kitty Carlisle from quite some time ago, but in 1941, maybe this is what it is. Phone companies didn't want to pay Carlisle for basically royalties for her recordings. So Bell Labs digitally recreated her voice. And I think it is that uncanny valley that is piquing people's interests, because you're landing right in that like digital threshold as computers and things come online. You're trying to recreate someone's voice, which we are evolutionarily programmed to recognize and know, just like a face. And when it's just slightly off, it's
weird.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It gives you that unsettling feeling. A lot of movies capitalize on this. But it was recorded at a, quote, danceable 120 BPM. The crybaby tone heard by those who called Golf Tip in the 90s was this recreation, not the original that we just played, but instead the digital recreation. So perhaps this humanness and this danceability to it, in Jillian's words, I love that, in addition to the hypnotic repetition, the oscillation, the uncanny valley of it all, is maybe what made it kind of an addictive mystery. It just gripped people so interestingly.
Yeah, I mean, listening to it the second time, I was like, oh, maybe there's something a little unsettling there. I mean, that's what it is, though,
It is.
right? At first, it was weird, and I was like, okay, hold on, this is a little unsettling. On top of the weird, like, what is the purpose really?
So this it kind of moved away from the idea of a purposeful social experiment, but I do subscribe to some of the pieces happening here. What it does feel like is an amalgamation of accidents that coalesced into a mystery that had just enough interesting pieces all in the right places that it just entered the zeitgeist. It just entered common knowledge.
But how was it pieced together? I mean, the whole counting thing.
That's the thing.
Like, it must be recording, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't go straight to the siren.
You're right.
It goes to the counting and the siren. So it's obviously like.
Yeah, no, you're right. There was a watchful hand somewhere in there in the early 90s.
Yeah, somewhere in there, someone like took the time.
Do you feel
splice
different
that
after
in.
hearing that? Do you feel programmed?
No.
That's exactly what you should say when you're programmed.
And I fooled everyone.
All right, coming back to the invisible hand of the 90s, was this potential marketing? There was a billboard placed in Canada that was promoting the hotline as a place to get legitimate golf tips. And aside from the billboard, there were advertisements in newspapers and magazines. It's unknown if there were other billboards, but we simply couldn't find any other mentions outside of the one in Canada. Many Redditors described not thinking much of the number or its advertising until all their friends began talking about it. That's what really kind of keyed them in on this as a topic in the beginning, which is perfect advertising, by the way, to slip into your subconscious.
But like, it's an advertisement for what? What am I supposed to be buying here?
That's a good point.
Like what? Like,
it's a good question.
What item or thought, anything is supposed to pull money out of my wallet into yours?
Sometimes it isn't about taking your money. Sometimes it's about, at this point, it's loud
Taking
and
my
clear.
time?
It's your data. And yes, this feels weird. Yes,
I
it feels
forgot
shallow.
about that.
It's just a phone number. But again, in the 90s, that was essentially the equivalent of your entire internet footprint.
Yeah.
You know?
Pull your phone number, and then they have your phone number. They sell your data.
Mm-hmm. So if they could just get a huge list of phone numbers, bada boom, bada bing. But again, you're right though. What are they marketing? If we're talking about the theory of marketing, what is that part? Because that is positioning a product in front of you to get your money. That's a good question.
Right. So I don't think it's marketing anything. I think if anything, it's what you said. They're trying to steal data.
Maybe. So let's dive further. Oh, I Get Jokes recounts the billboard as a, quote, full color with a close-up of a golf ball and a club angled away from the camera, green grass, some blue in the upper left, 1-800-GOLF-TIP in big yellow 3D lettering. So again, is it marketing for golf products? Is it marketing for the PGA Tour, for USA Today? Because they partnered on that effort, who knows? But the numbers spread to people all over North America, enticing them to call. And it's basically bringing golf to the top of their mind. So maybe, just like the FIFA World Cup, which happened recently, a lot of news coverage for a lot of different reasons, but it's pushing it into people's minds. And so people that maybe don't watch soccer or football suddenly start watching. And now the advertisements are working because that's what they pay for, and la-da-da-da-da-da, you know? So it maybe is just a way to weasel a topic, golf, into people's minds.
True.
Them planning all the word of mouth spreading, though, that's one of the wrinkles. You can't anticipate virality. And one confirmed billboard, not much of a marketing spree.
It's just such a weird way to try and entice people to play golf.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. Or watch golf.
Right.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to think, because, we create stuff, we market stuff, like the Sippy Cup of knowledge.
March 9th.
But there is no road or timeline where you, myself, and Christian are sitting there and going, let's create a number, 1-800-SIPPY-CUP.
Hold on. Write that down, Christian.
Okay.
right? And then it
It
has
just spouts facts.
right. Like for that to be like, that is how we get this sippy cup off the ground. Even then, we're not even mentioning that, like we're not even
Right.
selling the damn thing.
Right. There's no mention of it being a tangible, viable product. March
Right.
9th. But yeah, 1-800-NO-CUP, KNOW, cup, possible. Maybe you have to buy that from Mayfair or whatever.
Yeah. But it's just like, it's hard to believe.
I'm with you. I feel that.
Someone in like a corporate office was like, this is how we're going to market.
Yeah. And to lean into that gut instinct, I think that is a big wrinkle here with it being a marketing spree, is that maybe it was marketing. Maybe it was marketing for this one weekend, December 3rd and 4th, 1994. And then whatever happened, it just happened. The billboard stayed up too long, or no one came to buy that billboard, so they just left it. Like, who knows? Mistakes happen. And then it just ended up feeling like it felt bigger than it actually was.
True. But then again, like who spliced in the counting?
That's still the wrinkle.
That is the part.
That
if
is
it was
still
the
the wrinkle.
weird siren, sure.
I'm glad you keep bringing it back to that, because I keep kind of forgetting.
It's just
You're
like
right.
someone had to go, like, sit there and go, I'm going to put this counting in.
Yeah.
For what reason? We'll never know.
Now, before we move on to the next theory, I do want to add that there was another thread to this particular theory that was presented by YouTuber Barely Sociable. He suggested that perhaps it was being used for, quote, marketing-led generation. Essentially, whoever advertised this number was trying to gather active phone numbers for telemarketing purposes. I'm on the same page as my boy.
There we go.
Perhaps they were trying to sell golf-related products or needed active numbers of who might be interested, because then someone could start cold calling you. Hello, ma'am or sir. I heard that you were interested in golf tips. We have a special on the number 9 iron and the number 5 wood. And if you're lucky, you can get a putter for free.
Wow.
I hope I spoke in a language that makes sense, because that's...
No, you did.
I don't understand what I'm saying.
I mean, look.
I'm not selling this well.
I'm not going to buy it, but I'm also not your target audience.
But ultimately, I do want to close this theory out with the fact that we are unable to find verified proof of the Canadian billboard's existence. So again, as always, we want to be honest with the data that's out there. We talk about the billboard, but it's so hard to find the verifiable stuff. So with that said, let's move on to the number station theory. Did a whole episode on the idea of number stations. If that sounds interesting to you, I encourage you to go check out that episode. It's fascinating. But is Golf Tip perhaps a subset of these number stations? Essentially, radio stations that broadcast 24/7 codes or numbers or keywords or things like that. And they all have different theories as to their purpose, what's behind them, where are they coming from, etc.
But if you're trying to broadcast codes for someone to decipher,
Mm-hmm.
why take a number that was any way, shape, or form popular or like advertised, right?
Right.
You think you'd want to be at least a little incognito.
Mhm.
This is something that's like, oh, that number
This
was
is in your
famous for a
face.
weekend.
Yeah, and it's not random. It's 1 through 10. Whereas one of the theories behind number stations is somebody could sit down and decode random numbers and characters
Very
or whatever.
true. Very true.
This is just 1 through 10. A terrible code, but maybe it means something deeper.
I mean, someone's passcode somewhere.
Terrible. Terrible.
Absolutely atrocious.
That's the keypad to get into the headquarters here at Task Force. So that's kind of our personal expounding upon this theory. But a user named 606, all numbers, it's theorized that maybe they are the same person as Reddit user 606.
Oh.
Yeah. They wrote about this on Hulver. Christian, do you know what Hulver is?
How was Hulver?
What's Hulver?
It's a very weird site. It seems almost similar to 4chan. It's a site where you can make an account and then you can make essentially blog posts that allow
Okay.
people to comment and engage with you. And it seems like an aggregator of all of these different users.
So you could have like personal pages and discussion forums on those personal pages?
So like Zanga?
kind of, yeah. Except
That's really old. I just dated myself.
except it doesn't seem like you can have a personal page. It's just like
Oh, okay.
an aggregate of a bunch of different users.
Got it. So just like some
blog
sort of
posts.
message board.
Yeah, kind of like a message board. It's very strange.
In like a
Interesting.
blog format.
Yeah. Message board in a blog format is a good way to summarize.
Well, on this very strange blog-oriented website, 606 wrote about Golf Tip. And this was in 2004, to go ahead and date Fredo.
Oh, no.
So this individual theorized that the number's purpose was a number station. They also said, like previously mentioned users, they would call many different funny or unusual combinations of phone numbers to see what would happen, see who was on the other side. One of them was actually 1-800-FISH-TIP. I'm just going to say, same disclaimer, I don't know anything about that phone number, but they claimed that FISH-TIP had the exact same recording of the counting. 606 worried that the government was aware that they called the number and felt like they could be being watched now. Suddenly that, maybe some secretive agents were following them around or peering through their windows.
What reason?
I don't know. I think it's just paranoia,
I mean,
Start dabbling with a weird tone.
that's what I'm thinking is just paranoia.
It's also early internet, and you remember, right? Like,
Right.
don't put your personal stuff on there.
Yeah.
Don't poke around. It's spooky. It's anonymous. I mean, now we all kind of get it and go, whatever. FISH-TIP is still active to this day. So again, disclaimer, but it is owned by PrimeTel, which is interesting. And I believe it's also the explicit hotline. So there you go.
Jillian called and confirmed. It is an
Oh,
explicit
poor
hotline.
Jillian. Bless her, because I would have,
Jillian called and confirmed for 15 whole minutes that is in fact explicit hotline. It's just really
Just gotta make sure.
investigation work going on there.
Yeah.
Just in case anything else popped up.
Mm-hmm. Now, to address the potential cynics in the room, the major reason this theory is probably untrue is because 800 numbers have a call record, which would defeat the purpose of secrecy to any listener trying to call in and decode some sort of mysterious, cryptic message, which would undo any sort of spy or espionage activity. And with no difference in numbers, there is no coded message, of course, right? The 1 through 10 repeated. So the last theory I want to discuss is that of a placeholder test. I think this, because I kept kind of forgetting about the elephant in the room, the recorded numbers and then the tone. It's a really interesting theory, and I think it might answer the question that you have, like, who did it and why? So let's talk about that. Of course, looking back at the Tampa Times advertisement, it's confirmed that at least at one point in time, there was a documented clear owner, the PGA. This led to a strong theory that what people could be hearing when they called was simply a placeholder test, just something to park the phone number. Many online, including Oh I Get Jokes, consider Golf Tip solved with this theory. Now let's take you back to 94 again, because after the weekend of December 3rd, 1994, Golf Tip could have remained under the PGA control. Remember, like when you buy a website, you don't buy it for a few days, you usually buy it in lots of a year or a half a decade. So maybe they bought this number for the weekend, but they they had to buy it for a decade.
Right. But then have that as a placeholder. Put some audio, some counting, maybe a siren thing.
Right. They could have done that themselves, of course, but it also could have been turned over to what is known as the central office, who they themselves could have essentially parked it by playing this placeholder test message until it was eventually repossessed. Websites do this all the time. But if you go to any sort of web page now, you're going to end up with a splash page. You're going to see the domain organizer, like a GoDaddy, that owns that domain, and they wait for someone to come to them to buy it. Or it could be just a placeholder page from an individual, but basically saying that maybe this test, this audio, is just a way to say it's owned but inactive.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, probably the answer. They just threw something on there to hold its place. It cost them nothing to just keep it, and that's where we're at.
Mm-hmm. So with regards to the central office, it's in charge of switching trunks once they time out, which is why this number might have bounced back to them if the PGA is like, we don't care about this anymore.
Right.
Yeah. You still own it, you still paid for it, but we'll just push everything to this random recording until people get the idea that it's gone.
Uh-huh.
Now, a placeholder test message plays when the trunk times out. Most trunk lines are available at a monthly rate. The PGA likely had to purchase a month's worth of occupancy on this trunk line, even though they only intended to use it for one weekend. And given that it is a big association, I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up with a month-to-month subscription that they paid for years and just never knew, because that's an accounting rounding error for such a big company. $50. I don't know what a phone number would cost, but a couple $100 here and there hidden amongst thousands and millions.
Right.
Maybe they then owned it with those placeholders for a while. Some accountant later on said, "Oh God, we got to cut that."
Yeah,
and then Mayfair comes
they're
through.
too busy like running. I don't know if you've heard of it, golf.
No, I haven't.
A
Break this
little bit
down.
of-
Do you use a baseball bat?
You use a thin baseball bat,
Oh,
and you hit
golf.
a very small
that I've heard of.
basketball.
Oh, what you're talking
on
about is
turf.
basketball.
It's gonna be one of those weird sports that, like, I don't know. There's the movie Dodgeball, and I always wish it was like a thing because they make a good joke on there where it's like it's on ESPN 8 to Ocho,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
just like it just shows a montage of like different sports, and it's like a squirrel being pulled by a little like boat, and he's like water skiing.
What?
And I'm just like, I want a weird, like, you know what I mean? And like, golf would be a sport that's shown on there.
Yeah.
Because there's all kinds of very unique sports that actually are like,
Oh
things.
yeah.
I just don't know if there's like there probably is a place that hosts all of them.
Yeah. I mean,
But-
ESPN gets at least up to 4. I don't know how much higher it goes from there, but yeah, I mean, an
It's
old
all-
coworker of mine used to play Ultimate Frisbee, and that's where the games would be played on those higher ESPN channels.
Weird.
Yeah.
Frisbee.
All right, write this down, Christian. Basketball. We're slowly onto something, and that sounded like gibberish. He's just
Basketball. It's a very
he just
long word.
slammed on his keyboard.
Fired off. Okay.
But I don't know. I think I agree with Reddit user. Oh, I get jokes. I think that this does very nicely address. It's not as interesting of an answer. It's not as dark as people might want, given the paranoia around it. But I think the placeholder test. I think the accidentally keeping the phone number live, but with a placeholder for too long until Mayfair
Sparked
came through.
intrigue.
Yeah, it sparked intrigue. But I think this one's answered. I don't know. What do you think?
In my mind, it is.
Yeah.
I feel like it's just a placeholder. The PGA is just like, we got too many things that we're worrying about.
Right.
You know what I mean? We got all these top golfers like Buck Johnson.
Dude, talk about Buck Johnson. Talk about
Is that a
Arnold
good-
Palmer.
Sounds like a golfer.
Dude, Buck Johnson, classic.
Sounds like a golfer.
Well, I think what you're getting at. I think the reason why you understand
they're
that.
busy.
Well, they are busy.
and it's
but
like one of the million things that's neglected. It's like
You're talking. Okay,
it's
hold on.
small
Buck
stuff.
Johnson. I need to give him his moment of fame because I think what you've identified is called cryptomnesia. When you forgot where you got the information from. He's a switchfoot player in basketball. He's one of our top tiers.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
He's leading the league right now
Right.
with about 15 slams. So, right.
And you go, how legit is this league? And you go, oh, pretty legit. And then like everyone
Yep.
behind like the referee is a task force member
Right.
in accounting. Like it's just completely the low level,
Yeah, dude.
like not even D level sports. It's just the lowest of the low.
Right.
It's played
Highly
It's
respected.
played just in our parking lot.
Right. We got a whole room
we
for it, actually.
barely have enough like task force members that participate.
Right, but it keeps it going.
every other week. But yeah,
But when Buck Johnson comes out, he struggles out of his car. He drives a Mini Cooper. He's got shoulders like a god, shoulders like a logger. And
it sounds like a damn it's like golfer name. I don't know.
oh, okay. Well, we've come to the mush part of the episode here at the end. But Task Force, man, I'm very happy that we got to get back into our bread and butter, where we started it all with internet mysteries. Let us know, if you subscribe to the placeholder test, if you've heard of this before. I'd be very interested to know.
Yeah, and what famous golfer do you know?
Yeah. And is his name real? Who knows? By the way, now here at the end of the podcast, my Canadian girlfriend has not heard of 1-800-GOLF-TIP.
Oh, okay. Not a golfer.
Now I'm going to start doubting. Not a golfer, not from Ottawa. Lied to me this whole time.
There's the mystery.
That must be the truth. Anyway, Task Force, Fredo, Christian, I will see you all next Monday right back here for another mystery.